Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. Our film started on a German island called Peacock Island. At first, I named it Andrea in Picala, and he grabbed his phone on the way. We had to deal with a policeman named Damp to Noble, but he stopped it at the last moment and told him he would get in the way. However, Andrea wasn't surprised and walked away. Later, he heard on the radio about a man named Patrick who was addressing a group of people. It reached the point where there was an announcer on this island working with chemicals that had to be applied to the snow on golf courses to clean the grass area and allow the wealthy to play golf all year round. At night, Sedan's father called his son Sabati, who works at this club, and Sedan called Ben Sabati, who worked at that golf club. He asked her when she would finish her work so he could come pick her up. She told him, "Just leave it. I'll finish with Tala and come home myself." At that time, some workers from a company named Time arrived and started spraying a green substance on the snow in the club. This substance was created by the company to turn snow into grass. There was someone with them speaking to the club and gathering the workers, all wearing protective clothing. He instructed the workers to be careful and spray only the necessary amount. Meanwhile, Andrea was sitting at home when their nanny, Camelia, came to him. She told him that the little girl was still not back and that she needed to go to the island to bring her child because he was waiting for her, meaning she had to leave before bringing him. She asked Andrea to take care of the little one, Annie, until she returned. Andrea didn't know how to handle the situation because he didn't want to take care of his sister and was afraid because he didn't know how to deal with her. Camelia reassured him and said not to worry. As soon as the nanny left, his sister woke up crying. He went to her, carried her, and stayed with her until their mother came home. When their mother woke up, she admired his care for his sister and asked him to stay with her until Camelia returned. Camelia was late, and Andrea skipped school to take care of his sister. That morning, he took his daughter and dropped her off at the club. There, his partner at the club, Marcelo, came and tried the first ball, throwing it until it went into the hole. As soon as the substance they sprayed moved into the hole and mixed with the soil, it began to seep into the water that the people on the island used. The first person to experience the effects of the substance mixed with the water was a man who drank the water. When he stepped outside, he felt a burning sensation in his teeth. When he checked them, he found them damaged. He went home, trying to figure out what had happened to him. The substance spread through his body, and the man lost control, turning into a zombie. Even his wife, who was in the bathroom, became a zombie after he attacked her. We learned that the substance contained a virus that turned people into zombies. The man became a zombie, and when his wife also transformed, the situation escalated. Returning to the club, Marcelo finished his experiment with his wife, feeling happy. However, the zombies attacked, and chaos ensued. The situation worsened as more people were infected, and the zombies began to spread across the island. When they wanted to leave, they saw the club workers running outside, but they did not understand anything. Then came their dog, Ruby, who turned into a zombie and chased after Moody and bit her on the neck. That means she too became a zombie. Marcelo and Michael ran away from her and entered. They closed the door on them in the club, but before the door was closed, the dog bit Marcelo on his legs and he also changed. All that remained was Michael, who ran away from him and entered hiding inside, and he did not know. He entered the kitchen, took a knife, and hid it. At that moment, the police officer Dan came to him from a woman. He went to her and found her complaining of a headache that her neighbors were causing in their house. When he approached that house, he saw behind the door people ignorant, and there was a lot of noise in the walls. Here, even that woman transformed and came and attacked him. Dan ran away from her and was able to enter the car and close the door and kept looking at her while she was ignorant of him. She wanted to bite him. He called his daughter to reassure her, but she did not answer him, so he confused her more. Here, other people came to him. All of them transformed. He knew that something had happened, not her. He left a message to his daughter telling her to take care of herself. The people of the island had something happen to them, and someone was attacking someone. Andrea, still at home with his sister, was unaware of the unfolding events. Their mother arrived, and they spent the day together. In the evening, Andrea went to the kitchen to fetch water for his sister, but their mother stopped him from using tap water and told him to use the bottled water in the fridge. Later that night, Andrea noticed something strange about his mother. Her behavior changed, and her teeth began to look different. Realizing she was turning into a zombie, Andrea fled the house in fear. Dan passed by the car and accidentally hit his mother, who fell to the ground. When he looked at her, he realized she had transformed like the others. He saw more zombies approaching and decided to lock himself in the house to avoid being killed. He managed to drag his mother into the house without letting her touch him. He locked her in the bathroom and went to call the police. The police issued a warning for people to stay indoors and not open their doors to anyone. Andrea was left thinking about what to do while his sister cried and screamed, attracting the zombies outside. He rushed to calm her down and watched the zombies through the camera, feeling helpless. At that moment, his father called, informing him that he was hiding in the club surrounded by zombies. Andrea promised to come to him and asked him not to move. He fought off 3 zombies on his way to the club and managed to enter, locking the door behind him. Meanwhile, the police and military forces arrived at the bridge leading to the island, but found it blocked by hordes of zombies. The officer in charge called his commander, reporting the overwhelming number of zombies and expressing their inability to enter the island. Because there are many zombies at the bridge, they must return. Here, the government decided to destroy this bridge immediately to ensure that the zombies do not leave the island. On the second day, the nanny Camellia was heading to the island as usual, but she found the bridge suspiciously exploded, and there was no way to enter. What she understood, and what was said, was that they still hadn't received the news, and there was no surprise. And what she understood was that they hadn't received the news, and there was no surprise. After Andrea, he went to his mother and wanted to give her something to eat, but when he was about to leave her, his little sister entered without him seeing her and approached her mother, who was staring at her. But Andrea came and started crying for Mo to come near him just so she would not come near his sister. Indeed, the mother started to push him away until she came out of the bathroom, and when she reached the middle of the house, fell on the TV on her head, and Andrea died. He was sad about her. He returned her to the bathroom, and here he decided to leave the house with his sister. As soon as he opened the door of the house, he hid behind it and left until all the zombies who were behind the door entered. He went out and closed the door on him. He then went out into the street, finding it filled with zombies. He ran toward a supermarket and decided to enter, but all the doors were locked, and zombies surrounded them from all sides. At the last moment, a door opened, and they were pulled inside. Dan told him that he had been hiding there since yesterday. Dan said that he had been hiding there since yesterday, watching the zombies. When he went to a vegetable fridge, he saw a girl who had turned into a zombie locked inside. Dan said, "This is my daughter Patty. I locked her here, hoping she might recover somehow." At the same time, Michael called the company to send a private jet to pick him up from the club. Michael knew that the substance developed by the company was the cause of the virus. The company told him they would help him, but first, he needed to destroy any evidence linking them to the virus so that no one would find out they were responsible. Meanwhile, Dan and Andrea were still in the supermarket, listening to the broadcaster Patrick on the radio as he spoke with the minister on the phone. The minister told him they had decided to kill everyone on the island to ensure the virus would not spread outside and cause a national crisis. After finishing the call, Dan called Patrick and told him, "I have 2 healthy children and my infected daughter. Please send help to get us out and treat my daughter later." Patrick said he couldn't help, as there was a risk of spreading the virus if they were taken off the island. Dan was heartbroken and ended the call. Dan began to think. He told Andrea, "The source of the virus might be the water everyone on the island drinks. There's only one water source, and people who drink it are still getting infected. It's essential to leave the island and search for a cure for this disease." The next day, 2 armed women from the company arrived. They killed any zombies they encountered. Michael burned all the contracts between him and the company, which documented their agreement regarding the golf course. He still had a sample of the substance. After burning the contracts, the women approached him. He was happy, thinking they had come to rescue him as promised by the company. But to his shock, one of them grabbed him, and the other forced him to consume the substance, turning him into a zombie. Meanwhile, Nanny Camellia sensed that there were still healthy people on the island. She called Patrick and asked him to find a solution to help those who weren't infected escape. Patrick said the government couldn't risk the lives of millions outside the island to save 2,000 people on it. Back to Dan, he covered his infected daughter to prevent her from infecting anyone. He left the supermarket with Andrea and Annie. They got into a car and headed to the main water plant that supplied the island. When they arrived, they left Annie in the car and locked her in while they entered the facility. As soon as they entered, a zombie attacked Dan, but he managed to push it into the water tank. Dan wanted to pull it out, but another zombie emerged from the tank, behaving as if it were lifeless and unresponsive. In the end, he managed to pull it out. As they exited the facility, they encountered zombies, but they didn't attack as long as his infected daughter was with him. Dan took his daughter and rushed to the car. He used her fingerprint to unlock her phone, the only phone they had. Suddenly, he noticed a green mark on her hand. As he pieced together the events and the news about the experiments conducted at the golf club, he realized that the substance used at the club was the cause of everything that happened on the island, which was otherwise covered in snow. The golf club was the only place with grass. His daughter had worked there. After understanding everything, they headed to the club, where the 2 armed women were still present. The women went out onto the grass and pulled out some balls, which they began hitting on the grass. These balls were the key to eliminating the virus. Dan and Andrea reached the club, finding all the doors locked. Dan climbed to the roof and opened the door for Andrea. They entered the club and Dan locked his daughter in a room. Andrea set up a barricade of chairs to protect himself. Then, Dan and Andrea began searching the club for anything that could help them. Andrea filmed everything with Patty's phone. After a while, they found the zombie dog, which had reached its final stage, completely transforming into grass. Dan was terrified his daughter might reach this stage before he could cure her. He told Andrea they should split up to save time. Andrea began searching. He threw himself at his sister but couldn't find her, which made him extremely worried and start looking for her in the club. He kept searching until he found a gas canister rigged to explode. He tried to stop the explosion, and just as he reached it during the countdown, he fell and got infected too. However, he managed to grab the device and stop the countdown with the help of his daughter, whom he was still carrying. The explosion was prevented at the last moment. Those two girls were still outside. When they saw the countdown stop on their device, they went inside to check what was happening. As they passed through the kitchen, they realized she wasn't infected with the virus. Without mercy, one of them put some of the virus into her food and made her eat it. Andrea then came, picked up his sister, and carried her without realizing she was also infected. Suddenly, those girls came out of the kitchen and tried to catch him. They were going to infect him too, but one of them transformed and bit the other. At that moment, Dan, who had also turned into a zombie, attacked the second girl. One of the balls fell from one of their hands, and Andrea accidentally stepped on it, releasing smoke. His sister inhaled it, and the infection in her started to lessen. Dan noticed this and attacked Andrea, but as he inhaled the smoke, his infection also began to diminish. Andrea managed to escape this time. Once things calmed down, Dan handed Andrea his daughter. Andrea went live on social media using Patty's phone to show people everything that had happened in the club. He explained that those infected with the virus could recover and turn into healthy green plants. He asked for help to get him and his sister out of there since they were still uninfected. The broadcaster Patrick saw his live video, sympathized with him, and spoke on the air, urging the government to save the uninfected people. The government responded and sent its special forces to the island. Andrea stood with his sister, waiting for them to arrive, but he noticed they were armed and killing anyone they found without confirming if they were zombies or not. Andrea realized they would kill him too, so he took his sister and ran before they saw him. When the forces reached Dan, they found him outside and no longer infected. He told them he wasn't infected, but without mercy or verifying his claims, they burned him and his daughter on the spot. The forces continued their operation, killing everyone they encountered. They declared they had controlled the situation and assured people there was nothing left to fear. As the spokesperson finished his statement, he raised a glass with the company name AIM printed on it, indicating that AIM was behind everything that had happened. At this point, Camellia took a small boat and went to the island. She found Andrea and his sister, who were now free from the infection. Andrea was overjoyed and regained hope. He greeted Camellia, boarded the boat with her, and they left the island. Once they were far enough, he threw the ball he still had into the lake. A fish ate it, got infected with the virus, and turned into a zombie fish. And that's where the movie ends. I hope you enjoyed this summary. Don't forget to check out previous summaries and subscribe to watch future ones. See you in the next video.